Uh, James chapter 5, verse 9. We touched on this a little bit last week. It says, "Do not grumble against one another, brethren, lest you be condemned. Behold, the judge is standing at the door." And the first thing I thought about when I read this was, when you're hangry, and you're so hungry that if you don't get food pretty soon, that you don't go through the drive-thru, you go right to the buffet because you don't have to wait. Because when I get hangry, I don't get hangry very often because I don't wait that long. But when I do get hangry, I better get some food, and I better get it pretty quick. Because somebody's fixing to pay for the wrath of a person going hungry. Now, I don't know why that is that you get like that, but man, it's something about that's a real, may not be a real word, but it's a real word. You start wanting to start taking jabs at people, not literally, but maybe verbally or something. Somebody's got to get you some food. Well, that's what I kind of thought about when I think about this. They've been persecuted to the point by these rich oppressors and things that James is saying, be careful that you don't start poking at your brother. Just start, saying things that you shouldn't say, or blaming, or getting ill with them and things. So, because if you do, you'll all be condemn your own self. And he's trying to tell them that, you just be patient, turn it over to the Lord, and let Him handle it. Let Him handle these situations that's coming up. But it's kind of like the idea, okay, I'm at the point now where I'm been persecuted so much that I'm ready to start. Somebody's getting ready to pay for this. And so he's warning them not to start taking it out on your brothers or your sisters or anyone, and don't be condemned. Let the ones who's being oppressed be the condemned. You don't be condemned by this. And then what's happening when they do this automatically is they're becoming like judges. Rather than being brothers, now they're taking on like a role of a judge and starting to condemn and starting to maybe say things that they shouldn't say. And James is trying to tell them, says, look, the judge is at the door. This judgment is it's close. So don't become a judge yourself. Don't start poking, and don't start blaming, and don't start saying things against your brother, because the judge is here. You don't become a judge. You just turn it over to the Lord and let Him deal with it like He sees fit, and don't take it into your own hands. And that's kind of like what hangry does. Hangry gets in there and says, somebody better give me, I got to have some food, and I got to have some right now. I got to have some relief from these oppressors. If I don't get some pretty soon, somebody's going to pay. And James says, don't pay. Turn it over to the Lord. He's standing at the door. Robert, if you don't care, read Revelation chapter 3, verse 20 and 21. Revelation 3, 20 and 21.
Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and dine with him, and he with me. To him who overcomes, I will grant to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on His throne. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches.
Yeah, so here Jesus Himself didn't even, He said He could have took a vengeance on those who had treated Him bad, but He didn't do that. He left it up to the judge. And so Jesus is saying, don't be like me. Look, but use me as an example. and don't poke at your brothers and don't cause problems. James chapter 1, verse 12. Henry, can you get that?
1:12.
James
Blessed
1,
is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to them that love him.
So here's that promise back when they were dealing with all these temptations and things that they were going through. He said, go through these temptations because the purpose of a temptation for them was to create endurance and to create patience. And he said, so have that, and when you get through, you got a crown. And that crown you're going to get is what a athlete gets is just a regular old wreath. What you're going to get is an eternal crown. It's going to last forever. And what the athlete gets is a temporary thing. So take heed to that warning, lest you get condemned, and understand that the judge is at the door. Verse 10. My brethren, and that's a place to start, is my brethren. And he said, he's affectionate here toward them. He's saying, I'm writing you these letters. I know I'm probably giving you some hard things to endure right now and to take while you're going through these things. But I want you to understand that I care for you and that I love you, and you're my brethren. So he says, I want you to take for an example the prophets. He says, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of suffering and patience. I know you want to take things in your own hand. I know you want to have some people to pay for the things that they're doing. But look at the prophets, for an example, he says. And what did they do? What was a prophet's job?
Speaking God's message.
Yeah, that simply, God told them something, and they spoke what God told them to do. But if they didn't like them, especially the children of Israel, a lot of times didn't like that message. And when they didn't like that message, they persecuted or even went to the point to kill the prophets. And James is saying, look at them. Look at these prophets as an example of what they went through because they spoke what God wanted them to speak. And because of what the brethren did in these things, they oppressed them, they persecuted them, they even got to the point of where they was killing them. So if you need to know how to take heart, how to get your strength, then look at the prophets. And that's where you can get your strength from. That's where you can get your lessons from on how you ought to treat people, is because they just spoke the things of the Lord, and look what they endured. So if you have to endure something, go ahead and endure it and have patience and let God take care of it. Turn it over to God and let Him take care of it. And that's your example of how you should carry out your life and these situations. Matthew 5, 11 and 12. Zach, if you can read that. Matthew 5, 11 and 12.
Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you and say all things of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets that were before you.
So how are we supposed to act when they revile and persecute you and say all things falsely against you? Rejoice and be exceedingly glad. Now that's tough to do. That's easy to do right here in front of everybody, and you're standing up here in front of everybody. That's easy to say. But when you're being persecuted, when people are doing things against you that's harmful, that's even And some cases here, your family's starving to death because they're holding back your wages and things, and that's how these rich oppressors was dealing. So how you going to deal with that? Well, the natural thing is I'm going to get my money. I'm going to go do whatever I have to do to get my money from these. And so James says, look at the prophets, and blessed are you, which means what? What's blessed mean?
Happy.
Happy. Happy are you. You can be rejoicing when these things happen to you, because what's happened is you're creating endurance and you're creating patience. Your faith is growing while these things happen. Probably one of my favorite things that Mark has done, which you know about this stuff when you read it and stuff, but it really comes alive when you really think about Hebrews chapter 11 and verses 36 through 38. Scott, were you access to that since you got the mic? Hebrews 11 and verse 36 through 38. We're all familiar with that first part of Hebrews as that's what Mark pointed out. And, you know, they are getting kind of rewarded for their faith, and they did things like Abraham was going to offer his son because he had faith that God could raise him from the dead. And that's what God asked him to do, was to offer his son. And so Abraham was willing to do that, but he was pretty sure he was going to get his son. Most all of these had positive consequences to some negative things that may have been going on in their life. But when you start looking at Hebrews 11, 36 through 38, that's a whole different ball game. Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Okay. Hebrews 11, 36 through 38. Still others had the trial of mockings, scourging, yes, and of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, were tempted, were slain with a sword. They wandered about in the sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in the deserts and in the mountains, in dens and caves of the earth.
All right, these people here that's in the Faith Hall of Fame, what does their faith include? What are they included? Well, they got trials and mockings, they got scourgings, and they're in chains, they're in prison, and they were stoned. And here's one that gets me: they were sawn in two. Now, up to that point, I'm kind of okay. I don't really want to be stoned, and I don't really want to be in prison or any of them other things. But when it says sawn in two, for whatever reason, that kind of, I'm like, nah, I'll take something else. You know, take me out here and stone me or something. But when they do that, what are they showing? They did that because it was either I believe in Jesus or I get sawn in two. Which one you going to take? And they said, well, I'll take sawn in two, because I am not denouncing Jesus. And what an example for us, and one that, you know, I hope I would be able to do. I have a whole lot of hoping there instead of yes, I definitely, if I had to choose between the two, I can serve Jesus and I can tell people that I'm going to serve Jesus. Or I can tell them, no, I'm not serving Jesus, but in my heart, really I am. But I don't want to be sawn in two, so I'll just tell them, no. And that's not what they did. They said, no, saw me in two, or put me in prison, or stone me, or do whatever. And James is pretty much giving these examples. These are the kind of examples he says, look at these people and what they did and how they reacted, and you have that same kind of reaction. Acts 7:52.
Those are the occasions when the Bible talks about we have to confess Christ. A lot of people think that just means,
At baptism.
prior to baptism, but it continues to go on.
Yes.
Under those circumstances, they still had to confess Jesus as the Son of God.
Yeah, that was a major league thing. Scott, if you can't, Mark, do you mind reading Acts 7:52?
Scott. Acts 7, verse 52. Okay, I got so much writing in this Bible, I've had to number it. Starting in the middle of the sentence, really, which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute, and they killed those who were foretold the coming of the just one, of whom you now have become the betrayers and murderers?
And so Stephen is about to be stoned to death. And in the process about to be stoned to death, one of the reasons why he's about to be stoned is, well, why should I expect you to treat me any different? You killed the Messiah. You killed the people who spoke about the Messiah. And so how do I expect you to treat me any different? So now James is telling these brethren, remember all these people that did things. Remember these prophets that went before you. And if you endure these things, then happy is what you're going to be. You're going to be blessed off of it. All right, why am I not? Okay, finally. Verse 11, indeed we count them blessed who endure. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and have seen the end intended by the Lord, and that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. I guess if you want to go to a person who endured a whole lot and had patience during it all, you'd have to turn to Job. And you talking about bad news after bad news after bad news. You got a servant that just barely survived, comes and tells you that all your oxen are dead, and another servant just comes right after that and tells him that your camels is dead, and another one comes right after that and tells pretty much all your livestock are dead, which is your income is pretty much gone. And then he comes in right after that, and there's another message here that there was great winds in all four corners of the house, that all 7 of your sons and your 3 daughters were there, and it just collapsed, and when it collapsed, it killed every single one of your children. Now, you're talking about very bad news and being, I mean, I don't know what I would have done if somebody says, well, you've totally been wiped out financially and now all your children are dead. Every one of them. Just like that. All one right after another, right after another. How do you think you would have reacted if you'd have had to go through that? And I mean, that's just seems like more than you could take. But what did Job say? Job chapter 1, verse 21. Who wants to read that? Any volunteers? Job 1:21. Okay.
And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
So Job just cursed God, didn't he? When all that happened to him? No. He said, I came into this world naked. I'm going to go out of this world naked. And the Lord gave me what I have. And if the Lord decides to take it away, then blessed be the name of the Lord.
One of the things we know about Job, he went through the whole gamut of emotions. And so he was extremely angry at the Lord at
Yeah.
You know, we see, and it's not just Job. I mean, you see a lot of the prophets going through that as well. As long as we hang on to him, then he'll help us through it. But it's natural to feel those emotions.
And that's a very
And
good.
God has even said that. In dealing with Hosea, he said that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because, and all of this, when you're counting it joy and you're rejoicing, it's not you're rejoicing in these things you're going through. It's that you're rejoicing in the fact that you still have God to help you through these things. Robert?
It goes on to say, well, you turn it off, Scott. It goes on to say that in all these things, Job did not sin nor charge God foolishly. So he kept his mouth shut and his attitude right. And that's not an easy thing. In spite of all that he felt, he did not sin nor charge God foolishly. That's what the text says. So he's truly an inspiration for sure.
Yeah, and I was wanting us to look at Job 13 and verse 15. And it says there, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Even so, I will defend my own ways before him. So this is kind of what Mark's saying. I ain't done nothing wrong. I know I've got 3 friends in here supposed to be my friends, and they say if you're going through this, then you had to sin against God. You don't go through this kind of stuff without sinning against God. And Job maintains, well, I haven't sinned against God, but yet I'm still going through this. And so I guess Job is sitting there going, why? Why am I going through this? He don't understand that God has made a deal with Satan that he can do whatever he wants to with him, because he knows that Job will not denounce him and that he will not turn his back on him. And at the same time, Job is going, why am I going through all this? What's happening? And I don't understand it. Job chapter 19, verse 25 through 27. Henry, you got that. You got a mic, so you can go ahead.
Look right here. Sometimes I have trouble finding these books.
Right.
So forth.
Yes.
I mean, who among us has not suffered such a great loss and said, God, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why did I have to lose this?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the reason why James is bringing up all these different people like this as examples, because they're being persecuted. It's not like they're just sitting there and James is just writing this for the fun of it. And he's saying, remember the prophets and remember Job and remember what they've gone through. Then you can endure this because they did. And when you look at it, as we'll see in a minute, what God ended up doing for Job and how he ended up blessing him. But at the moment when you're going through this, that's a tough pill to swallow.
What'd you say, Job? What?
Job 19, 25 through 27.
And I know that my Redeemer liveth, for I know that my Redeemer liveth, and he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, whom I shall see for myself, and mine eyes shall behold, and not another, though my reins be consumed within me. But ye should say, why persecute we him, seeing the root of the matter is found in me? Be ye afraid of the sword, for Ralph bringeth the punishments of the sword, that you may know there is a judgment.
And so here, Job says, no matter what's happening to me, what I got to keep in focus is I know I'm going to be with him one day. And whatever he does to me, if he decides to kill me, if he decides to whatever, and that I'm going to have to go through, what I have to keep my focus on is heaven, where I'm going to spend eternity one day. That's what I got to keep my focus on.
It's not just that, it's the goodness of God and all. David is an inspiration to me because he's a man after God's own heart, and yet you read so many of David's Psalms where he is angry. Why, Lord, are you allowing my enemies to come against me? Why is this happening? But in most of those, what you see is a transition somewhere through the Psalm that he reflects on the goodness of God.
Yes.
What all God has done and will continues to do and will do in the future, and then all of a sudden he changes. And I think that's the key is reflect. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have life. I wouldn't have any of my blessings. I wouldn't have my family. I wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for God. So even going through tough times, if I stop, I need to stop at some point and realize that, hey, look, I'm talking about the creator of the universe that loves me more than anything. He's working it out to do me. Put faith in him.
Yeah. And that,
It's okay to feel those emotions, just don't turn me back on God or curse God during that time.
yeah, and that reminds us that really Romans 8:28, all things work together for good. Didn't say all things that we went through was good, did it? No. It says all things, I don't care how bad of things that you go through, what they're going to do is work for good. And that's going to work out. And what you're striving to do is to look like Jesus. That's verse 29. We stop at 28 sometimes, but all the things that you go through from the time that you're born to the time that you die, whatever they are, if they're good or bad, the purpose behind it is to help us to look like Jesus and to endure that. Hebrews 12:1 and 2, and I'll read this right quick because this is a familiar passage, but this is what I thought of when I think about these. And indeed, we count them blessed who endure, especially when that. And then you get that example of the prophets, and you get the example of Job. And chapter 12, verse 1 and 2 of Hebrews, he says, "Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses," who is that? Who's this cloud of witnesses he's talking about?
Those that have died.
All those
Serves
listed
God.
in that, what we call Faith Hall of Fame in Hebrews chapter 11, look at them. There are witnesses. Look what they went through. Look what they endured. And because if they can do that, what they're trying to tell us is you can do it. You can endure this. Why can I endure it? Because you look at all these people in Hebrews chapter 11. Sawn in two, going to prison, stoned, willing to offer their son as a sacrifice, whatever it may be. Build a boat when there ain't been no rain. You don't know nothing about rain. People don't know nothing about rain. It hadn't never rained before. Now you're building a boat right in your yard. Man, why are you doing that, Noah? Because God said it's going to rain. And if God said it's going to rain, even though I haven't never seen it, it's going to happen. And seeing that I'm surrounded by such a cloud of witnesses, then I need to do whatever I have to go through in order to endure these things and be counted blessed.
Now, Ronnie, what amazes me is how people turn their back on God today, knowing the situation this nation is in, not knowing what kind of future we have, even near future, and they turning their backs on God. It gets me.
It's amazing. And that let us lay aside every weight that does so easily beset us, because that we got all this crowd of witness. And not only that, let's look to that perfect example that we had of those who went to the cross and endured it for us. Let's look to him and to get our encouragement, to get our courage to do or go through whatever we need to go through. Okay. Is it real or is it Memorex is still the kind of the idea behind this. But when you look at it, if you got a real faith and you're a real mature Christian, what your reputation for honesty and integrity of speech should not be called into question. And that's what our next verse is about. Verse 12. But above all, my brethren, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, lest you fall into judgment. And I can remember when my granddaddy, first of all, you know, the one thing that you got that you can have, that you can treasure is your word. If you tell somebody you're going to do something or you're not going to do something or when you're going to do it or how you're going to do it, then that was your word. And it was bond. I mean, and I remember that, and I'm going to walk away from that camera a minute, but I remember when my granddad went to the bank, and you know what the first signing of the paper was? That's all you needed. Handshake was it. Once you did a handshake with the banker or whatever, that was a contract. That was your word. Can you imagine doing that today?
That's because the lawyers all ruined everything.
Well, you got lawyers, and your word don't mean anything anymore. Hardly. I mean, so many people's word don't mean that. If I tell you I'm going to be at the bowling alley at 7 o'clock, I got on my bicycle one time, put this heavy old bag of ball behind me because I told that I was going to be at the bowling alley. And so if I told them that, then I needed to be there. Unless I could get a hold of them and call them and tell them that. So I rode a bicycle with a bowling ball strapped behind my back to a bowling alley because I gave them my word. And what does that mean? I mean, what does your word, giving your word, mean today? And how is it valued? Because people will tell you anything now, and they won't do it.
Just in this day and time, there's too many promises and not enough commitments. And there's a difference between a promise and a commitment.
Very good. Because when you tell somebody you're going to do something, as much as lies in you, that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to be. That you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. And what James is trying to tell them here, he's dealt with the speech problems that they've had. They've let their tongue go wild and they've done things. He says, control your tongue. And here again, he's dealing with the speech idea, integrity. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. You don't have to put your hand on the Bible to do that. Because when you said, yes, I'm going to do this, or no, I'm not going to do this, that was the same thing as putting your hand on the Bible. You don't have to evoke God's name in there for your integrity to be, yes, I'm going to do it, no, I'm not going to do it. Your word is all you need. And
Ronnie, you trying to say if a politician tells us something, makes us a promise, you can't count on it?
oh no, you can. You can count on it. It's going to happen because they said. Yeah, everything on the internet is true. You take everything on Facebook to true value because they said. And that is a remarkable part, though. It's not about anymore. It's not about policies so much as it's just about being elected. And
That's why so many people don't even care to watch the debates or anything else anymore as far as politics go. Because Christ is not the center of our nation, integrity is gone, and you don't trust anybody.
And I'm going to tell you.
In fact, you go as far as assuming they're lying.
Right. And I'm going to tell you whatever you need to hear to get your vote. I don't care if it's true or not. Well, we got a long way today. We covered all
There was a
three.
joke, Ronnie, about politicians, they said, how do you know if a politician's lying? He said, well, his mouth is moving.
Moving, yeah. And the sad part about that is there's truth. And that's kind of the sad part to me is I'm telling you, eventually we are going to finish this. We're getting close.